Good morning.
Good morning.
Um, so I know who you are a little bit, but I bet you know you better than I do. And a lot of people who may wind up, watching this have no idea. So just kind of give me the Reader's Digest version. Who are you, and why might anybody care?
Well, a quick version.
Yeah, Reader's Digest.
Starting from looking at occupations, I have a master's degree in speech pathology, and started out in that vein in the public schools, and then went into a private practice for myself and with a partner. And one of the things that was very difficult with that private practice was that kids would come in and we would do an evaluation, and we'd say, okay, yeah, you really do need some help, and then they couldn't afford it. And so what do you do with those kids? The public school offered speech pathology, but only in a limited amount, and certainly not for some of the kids that we saw, and some of them were not even public school age. And I practiced for about 17 years in that practice, all the time with that little kind of gnawing, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel good. And my husband and I have been in the Peace Corps, so I sort of have that tendency to help others. And the pediatricians in the town came to our practice and said, people are bringing their kids to us and telling us to put them on medication. Now this was like 1980s, and we can't get good information from the school to know whether or not this is a kid who really needs medication, or if his issues are behavioral and doesn't need meds, or if he's got something else going on that's driving attention problems. So we put together a team to evaluate those students. We got some money from Crippled Children's to bring up a developmental pediatrician up from Salt Lake, and then I pulled together a social worker, an academic therapist, a physical therapist, and we did a speech and language evaluation. And we would have a group of kids come in, 4 or 5 kids, and we would do all of those assessments on them, and then the developmental pediatrician would see them and make recommendations to the local pediatricians. And it was a great model, and the pediatricians were thrilled.
And so that's something that hadn't really been done before.
Never been done before.
So just sort of some solving the problem on the spot.
Yeah, and plus we had some pediatricians who cared about the same time the Scottish Rite Masons were looking to set up a clinic in Idaho. There was an edict that came out from the Scottish Rite head honcho to set up a clinic in every state, and Idaho didn't have one.
I got you.
And they're mostly based in Boise, but they went to Boise and they said, we'd like to set up a learning clinic to the community. And Boise's fairly political, and so they'd go to Elks, and Elks would say, we'll help you, but it needs to be under our umbrella.
Oh, I got you.
Or St. Al's, but it needs to be under our umbrella.
Right.
And they really wanted a freestanding thing that they ran, but they didn't have the expertise for that. And they went to Pocatello, and they went to Idaho Falls, and when they came here, somehow we ended up in conversation. We said, we got something for you, and we'll help you do it. And so initially, then I left the practice and helped them set that. Speech pathology is working with anyone who has a speech problem, and this may be from a child who stutters to a child with an articulation problem to a child who hasn't, even though English is his first language, the way he's wired, he doesn't learn it easily.
Okay.
And or a person who had a stroke, who has lost their speech secondary to a stroke, or like an Iraqi veteran who's had a head injury, they lose their speech and they lose their cognition. And so speech pathology takes in that whole range. And essentially when I was in private practice, we worked with that whole range of people.
Okay.
And the Scottish Rite are, everyone's probably heard of Shriners and the Masons.
Well, boy, the Shriners, you can't miss them, can you?
No, you can't. So they're all under the larger umbrella of the Masonic order, and Scottish Rite are one entity under the Masons.
Okay.
And their charity is language learning disabilities.
Okay.
So that's how they
So
ended up coming.
a real natural fit.
It was a real natural fit. A real natural fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now you were involved in the creation of Wings.
Right. Initially when we set up the learning center, all we did was evaluations. And then as we did evaluations, we were making recommendations for services that didn't exist in the community. So then we would write grants, and we got a parenting group for attention deficit disorder. We got a library set up for learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder. We started some intervention services. In other words, highly trained clinical people who could teach reading and writing in the way that kids with learning disabilities could learn it, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that we kept seeing as a need, but we really didn't have any power over, was to address the needs of middle school students with learning problems. They fall through the cracks more often because the middle school model that we have in the regular public school doesn't match who they are. Kids with learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder don't lack the executive skills. We call them executive functioning, which is the ability
They don't organize well.
automatically organize,
Yeah.
to automatically manage time. And I say automatically, they can be taught, but they don't have it
Right.
initially.
They have no intuition for it.
No. and to remember, in other words, you get an assignment, keep it in your brain, write it down, remember that you wrote it down,
Yeah.
get it out when you get home, bring the books home to go with it. And so they, even though many of them, as we tested them, were very bright, they would often fail in middle school because they lack those abilities.
They're just not ready to be that self-directed
No.
yet.
The research shows that executive functioning, even in people without learning issues, develops over 30 years. I mean, so then there's just a developmental lag for them. So there's a mismatch between their brain and a normal middle school.
And so we're asking them to do things that they're just not going to do, and then we're surprised when they don't succeed.
Right. Or they need to be directly taught. I mean, there needs to be some notion that this is not automatic for them. When all the little pleaser girls in the class,
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. School is not made for 11-year-old boys.
No.
It's not for them. Yeah. No, I got it.